What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the reveal of the number 5 team in my 2019 NFL Power Rankings with a deep dive into the Indianapolis Colts. And heading into last season, a lot of the major networks had kind of written this team off, ranking them in the bottom 4. I put them at 20, said this team actually has a chance of making the playoffs this year, and was heavily criticized for that, and ultimately that ended up being too low as this team ended up making the playoffs. They really embarrassed the Texans, their division rival, in the playoffs in their own stadium in Houston. Then they did end up getting kind of outmatched against a very talented Chiefs team. But now as we enter 2019, this team is looking to make some noise. Because last year was supposed to be a bit of a transition year. You had Andrew Luck coming off a serious injury. You had a rookie head coach. Yet they kind of exceeded expectations last year and really enter this year with a lot of momentum, an established culture, and have had a good offseason to fill some of these holes on this roster that did still exist last season. Keep in mind, this is a team that a lot of people are ranking 32nd in the NFL because it was a roster that lacked a lot of talent. So they had guys break out last year. We're going to talk about who those guys were because some of you may be kind of unaware of why this team was good last year. So we'll cover that, and then we'll cover as well, like who the new pieces are here, and can this team get the talent here now to not just, win 10, 11 games, win a playoff game, but actually be a legitimate Super Bowl contender here and get Andrew Luck that Super Bowl ring that he frankly deserves as a guy that's been kind of screwed the first half of his career. So if you enjoy, if you learn something, please do hit that like button. It's the easiest way to support this channel and share the video. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications as well so you don't miss any more of these top 5 reveals as we finish up the series. Also, if you want a way to support the channel, if you're shopping for tickets, use promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. You're going to get the best prices there anyway, so you might as well save $20 and support my channel in the process. If you're new to the series, what we do here is we go through the roster and we rank each position, how they stack up against the rest of the league. While we do that, you will be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So yes, it is a video game, but they are my own ratings, and it's a nice little graphic to use to show how I perceive each player. After that, we go through the schedule. We talk about this team's Vegas over/under and my win total expectations for this team, along with division odds, playoff odds, Super Bowl odds, all of that good stuff. So make sure you stick around till the end of the video so you don't miss any of that good stuff. So as we said, a lot to talk about with this roster, but we will start with Andrew Luck here. Obviously, everyone very familiar with him. Now, you look back to this time last year, there was a lot of people saying like, oh, he's never going to be elite again. Is he even going to be able to play, and stay healthy? I didn't necessarily have those worries. I did have some questions on like, what's his arm going to necessarily look like? But I did expect him to really come in and still be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And over the last 200 days of really dialing in and watching Andrew Luck's 2018 season, a big thing for me was seeing, not can he complete the short passes and have a nice processor, show that mobility with his feet to extend plays and be an elite quarterback in that way, but what does his arm look like? And for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season, and remember, this team really struggled early out the gate, I actually didn't necessarily see that same arm talent that he once had. Part of it was this Frank Reich really implemented a quick-hitting passing game, which was a great idea to kind of protect Andrew Luck in getting rid of the ball quicker. But I saw a really good quarterback that maybe didn't have the same vertical, elite downfield accuracy and arm talent that we had kind of gotten used to with Andrew Luck. But as the season went on, I actually started to go the other way, and I saw him being more and more comfortable throwing the ball downfield, and the ball really by the end of the season had a ton of zip on it, and he really did look like good old Andrew Luck by the end of the season. So by no means was he bad last year. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but think about a full season of really being comfortable here, being back to speed. And I think Andrew Luck could get back into that conversation that we had about him several years ago of can he be the best quarterback in the NFL? And I don't see any reason he can't, especially after the strides he showed last year with his ability to really nickel and dime teams just as much as his ability to elude pressure and create big-time plays with his feet and arm downfield. So I've got Luck as the tied for third best quarterback in the NFL. I talked about how I have him tied with Russell Wilson, which is a big debate of the NFL offseason, especially on Twitter. I've stayed away from it. These guys are both elite. Both of you fan bases, Colts and Seahawks, should be happy to have the quarterback that you have and just admit that these guys are both very different players. I do think Andrew Luck has a ceiling that Russell Wilson does not necessarily have, but the floor might be a little higher. I don't think it really matters. Both these guys are fantastic, and Andrew Luck is a big reason this team comes in the top 5, if not the reason. Then you have Jacoby Brissett as the backup here, one of the more intriguing backups in the entire NFL. He played a lot when Andrew Luck went down and did not really play in 2017 at all. Showed some signs. He's a guy that could fetch a second or a third round pick for a team to come in and see if they can swipe away a starting caliber quarterback. I'm not going to really sit here and pound the table for Jacoby Brissett. He has all of the physical tools. He's an accurate thrower of the football. He's mobile. As far as his processor and all of that, I think he does leave a little bit to be desired. Now, I would actually probably prefer him to like Nick Foles for the Jaguars, to be honest. So, maybe he gets his chance. Maybe he just is a backup, a really good one at that. They do have Chad Kelly, an intriguing, talented player here, does have off-the-field questions, but if he can get his head on his shoulders, that could be something where the Colts say, we will trade Jacoby for a second or a third round pick, get back some of that draft capital that we gave up to get him because Chad Kelly is a serviceable backup here. Now, I don't think the rest of this roster is good enough for this team to be a legitimate threat without Andrew Luck, but that said, they do still have one of the better backup rooms in the entire NFL. So let's move on and talk about the running back, and we've really applauded this team for being smart with their resources, having one of the most modern thinking front offices. They don't spend a lot of money or draft capital on running backs or interior defensive linemen that can't rush the passer, which is a flaw a lot of front offices do have. So even though I rank this running back room tied for 27th, you'll notice I only have 3% of the entire power rankings going towards this position because it is such a replaceable position. And there's going to be a lot of Colts fans that tell me I am too low on this running back room because they do get a lot of production. And that's true. This team is one of the prime examples of the whole running back doesn't matter debate. They're going to go with the total committee here. They have Marlon Mack, who's fine. I tend to be a little lower on him. He, to me, just lacks that extra oomph to consistently make guys miss, to consistently fight for yards. He can do a little bit of everything, and he's a really low-end 3-down back and is this team's quote-unquote starter. But you also have Nyheim Hines. He's the reason this team is able to be a running back by committee because he can be one of the 5 to 10 best receiving backs entering his second year here. A really talented receiving threat, can turn that 3rd and 6 swing pass into a very quick first down and really can be a headache for opposing defenses. You have Jordan Wilkins, a power back, and then Spencer Ware. I've always been a big believer in Spencer Ware. I think his tape just speaks for itself. He can really do everything. Now, he just can't stay healthy, and I don't expect that to change at this point in his career. So when he is healthy, I do think he is going to come into this rotation, take some carries away from Marlon Mack, maybe play a little bit as a receiving back and take away a little bit from Nyheim Hines. All these guys play off each other. It's a good running back room. You just don't have that go-to guy, and again, that's fine. Maybe I end up being wrong on Marlon Mack. I just don't necessarily see it. From a fantasy standpoint, I am staying completely away from this entire situation. I think you're going to end up being very frustrated on a week-to-week basis because you just don't know who's going to get the ball that week. But that's really enough time talking about this running back room because they clearly just don't put a lot of emphasis on this position room. But then we're going to move on to the wide receivers here. We're going to spend a lot more time here on these wide receivers. It's going to come in tied for 17th, but there is a lot of upside here, and I want to spend a lot of time on this wide receiver room because I really can't say this enough. This was an awful group of wide receivers last year. It was a motley crew of guys like Zach Pascal, Dontrell Inman, Chester Rogers, that Andrew Luck, this offensive line, the play calling here really elevated the play of those guys, but I see some talent here that can really up the ceiling of this entire team, And this wide receiver room alone is why I like this team in the top 5. And if they can reach the potential we're going to talk about here, that is how this team can become a Super Bowl team. So let's get into that. You got T.Y. Hilton. We don't need to spend a lot of time on him. We really know exactly what he is at this stage in his career. He's an elite deep threat, but not just that. He's a versatile wide receiver, but a smaller guy who deals with injuries every year. He's probably going to miss 3 or 4 games again this year, just as he does every season, and that's fine. But you do need help around him for those injury reasons. So the next guy I want to talk about, and I really want to talk about, is Paris Campbell. I cannot say enough about how much I loved this pick on this team. I already liked him as a prospect and a sleeper pick in the draft, but then this landing spot is perfect. So Paris Campbell, he's a big body, 6 foot, like over 200 pound receiver, but he can burn. 4.31 40 time. He was in the same conversation with a rookie the year before in DJ Moore, who was a first-round pick for the Carolina Panthers. One of the best run-after-the-catch wide receivers coming out of college that I have ever seen. Not just the speed. He's not just Tavon Austin, Percy Harvin. He does have that kind of speed, by the way. But the size lets him not just run around you, but run over you. He will stiff-arm you, truck you. And to put him on this offense that, like we said, just implemented a short, quick-hitting passing game with a true deep threat to hide some of his deficiencies as a downfield route runner and potentially his hands, the ability to track the ball. Those were not strengths of Paris Campbell, but the fit here and the explosiveness he's going to bring as a playmaker. I love Paris Campbell, not just what he's going to do for this team from a true football perspective, but I think, fantasy football, production, awards, like Paris Campbell has serious potential to lead all rookie wide receivers in receptions, yards, touchdowns, and just blow this whole thing up in terms of potential. So I cannot say enough about Paris Campbell. I think he's going to be one of the best young players in this entire class. Then I'm going to talk about Deon Cain, a 6th-round pick last year. We've mentioned a lot of late-round picks at the wide receiver position in a very deep class last year. It was kind of weird how many really, truly talented receivers kept falling to the 5th, 6th, 7th round. And I thought Deon Cain was going to be a big impact on this wide receiver room because, like we mentioned, they didn't have a whole lot of players here. The problem is, he got hurt and was not able to get that rookie season started. So that's why you probably haven't heard of Deon Cain if you're not a Colts fan or an avid NFL fan. But for one, he's a Clemson wide receiver, which carries a lot of weight. The receivers that come out of that school just work in the NFL. But it's not just that. His tape was fantastic. He's a full-sized wide receiver, 6'2", over 200 pounds, has the speed, has the quickness, was a good route runner, has the hands you look for. Really, again, just don't understand how he was considered a 6th-round wide receiver. And I think getting him back is going to be a massive upgrade at the wide receiver room. Obviously has a lot to prove. He's a 6th-round pick that is coming off a serious injury, but I actually think there is a good chance he earns a starting job here and becomes a big impact for this team as this team's 3rd wide receiver. And notice how I mentioned those two before Devin Funchess. I'm not going to believe in Devin Funchess to all of a sudden figure out how to be a consistent player. Yeah, his flashes are excellent. You'll see him making amazing catches and changing individual football games. But you'll see him make a ridiculous catch, and then the next play, he's running a comeback, takes his 2 feet out of bounds before the ball arrives, and he gets flagged for illegal touching, or he'll have a boneheaded drop that leads to an interception. Like, he is so inconsistent. Sure, maybe they can do what they did with Eric Ebron and turn his career around here with Andrew Luck and better play calling. The upside's all there, but I am not going to predict that, especially when I like guys like Paris Campbell or Deon Cain. Then you have Chester Rogers. He's going to be flushed into the wide receiver 4 or 5 role here, which is probably where he belongs, but he's a good athlete, and he's slowly developed over his career, so you like the depth there. Also, Zach Pascal showed some signs last year. He'll probably make this team. They have Marcus Johnson, Doris Fountain, some depth there. Not really worth talking about. And then you do have the tight ends here. We mentioned Eric Ebron. He had a fantastic season last year. after really failing in Detroit. Now, he, to me, did still show some of those flaws in his game. He's not much of a blocker. He did improve in that regard a little bit, but also had some of those same, focus drop issues. Made some amazing plays as well. I do expect for a guy that had a high touchdown total to maybe take a slight step down, but he's still going to be that mismatch problem and a really good tight end here. And then what do you get from Jack Doyle? He played 6 games last year. You expect that he will stay healthy. Now, he's the opposite of Eric Ebron. He's a great blocker, amazing hands, but just doesn't have the athleticism to be a mismatch problem like Eric Ebron. If you could put Jack Doyle in Ebron's body, you'd have the next Rob Gronkowski. Unfortunately, you can't do that. So they do have a good 1-2 punch there, 2 very different players. Neither elite, but both are definitely starting caliber players. Then you have Mo Alley-Cox, a really good third tight end here. He can be a mismatch problem as a red zone threat, a former basketball player, took some steps up as a blocker as well, so you like what you have there. And then you have Ross Travis, who they are trying to develop, a former basketball player here, Ross Travis, to be another Mo Alley-Cox. So they come in tied for 17th. I do consider it an upgrade at wide receiver from last year. You do need to project there with Paris Campbell and Deion Kane. I think the upside here is pretty good. They just got to come out and prove it. And then all of this is going to be helped from a very, very good offensive line last year that was really the narrative for why this team was able to surprise last year. From one year to the next, they went from one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL to one of the best. A lot of that was staying healthy here with guys like Anthony Costanzo and Ryan Kelly, who are studs at their positions that really just have had some injury questions over their career. And Ryan Kelly did miss some time last year as well, so you hope he can stay healthy. We knew Quentin Nelson was going to be a stud. He was maybe even better than we expected. He's one of the best linemen in the NFL at left guard, and having that elite talent here really elevated the play of the guys around here as well. Then they nailed Braden Smith in the second round. He was 6'6", tremendous athlete coming out of Auburn. I really wondered why he wasn't considered a tackle and why he wasn't playing there at Auburn, because he has all of the length and foot quickness to do it. And the Colts saw that, saw the hole in the market, and really found a really good tackle in the second round, which is not easy to do. And then they pick up Mark Lewinsky from Seattle, of all places, and he comes in and plays at a very high level. Now, he's definitely helped by everyone else on this line being so good, but he's a good player in his own right. So you have no weaknesses in the starting 5. Now, Costanzo is a guy that's had injury history along with Ryan Kelly. You've got to keep those guys healthy. The depth here, not very good. Joe Hagg, a 5th-round pick in 2016. He has not really worked out as a starting caliber player here. You have Jamarcus Webb as low-level veteran depth. They draft Jackson Barton in the 7th round. He's a player I like, but he is a young 7th-round pick. Not really counting on that, but I did think that was a good pick. Maybe a guy that could be a low-level starter and a good pass blocker. They have LaRaven Clark. He can't really play. The interior depth, not very good, especially at center, where you do wonder if Ryan Kelly can play a 16-game season. They added a rookie, Javon Patterson, but he's currently on IR. So you really do have some depth questions here on this offensive line, but the starting 5 is very good. They come in the top 5 for offensive line, and it's going to be a strength of this team yet again. So the offense as a whole comes in 5th. You got the quarterback, you got the offensive line, you've got the number 1 wide receiver, you have all of the makings of a top 5 offense. Now, if those wide receivers we talked about can take that step up and this offensive line can stay healthy, this could be a game-changing offense next season, especially with Frank Reich, who is a fantastic offensive coach who really surprised a lot of people with how good he was in his first season. So not a ton of questions on the offense as a whole. Let's move on and talk about Matt Eberflus's defense this year, which was along the offensive line and Andrew Luck's play last year. One of the biggest surprises in the entire NFL last year was how good this Colts defense was. And we kind of talked about this in last year's deep dive, that they have some players here, guys that no one really is talking about, that could lead to this defense being a little better. than like the 30th defense that most people would have ranked it, and that's kind of exactly what happened. But it is by no means a perfect defense, and they do still have some holes here, but they have a ton of new rookies here to talk about and some veteran signings as well. So let's get into it here. Let's start with the run defense. Now, this was actually one of the best run defenses in the entire NFL last year, and a big part of that is something that we've spent a lot of time on this channel talking about, is that you don't need to spend a lot of money on nose tackles because you can pick up a guy like Al Woods and Margus Hunt who can really play the run very well, and this team really proved that last year. And again this year, you look at this interior defensive line and it doesn't have a lot of names. Now, Al Woods is gone. He was fantastic against the run, so you do need Grover Stewart or Jihad Ward or someone to step up in terms of run defense, but I do give this team the benefit of the doubt to get some solid interior play against the run. Darius Leonard, very good as a run defending linebacker as a rookie last year as well. I don't think it's going to be the best run defense in the NFL, but as we keep saying, the difference between the 5th and 21st run defense is very much marginal. This team will be fine in terms of stopping the run. They have a good culture as well here to get that done. Let's move on and talk about the pass rush, which should be improved this season. So Jabal Sheard is this team's number one edge guy, but they did sign Justin Houston here, so they have a really good veteran duo there. That is going to raise the floor of this pass rush. Jabal Sheard, one of the more underrated players on this team, in the league in general, really. A high-end number 2 pass rusher. And then Justin Houston, what do you get from him? He could still play last year. The Chiefs moved on from him a little too quickly, in my opinion. I think he still has a good year or two left in him. Not the elite game-breaking player that he was maybe 3 years ago, but he's still a low-end number 1 in my opinion. Now, he's going to rotate here. They have as much depth on the edge as anyone in the entire NFL, but like I said, those are the 2 best guys, and when it's 3rd and 6 in a critical game, those are going to be the 2 guys on the edge that this team wants getting after the quarterback. But you've got some interesting pieces behind them as well. So Kemoko Turay, a 2nd-round pick last year, a really nice rookie player, and was a guy that I really talked up in last year's deep dives. And he was about as expected for me. He was a good pressure guy, but a more of a raw player. He's really going to benefit from having time to develop here, not having those expectations to be this team's starter. And he's going to rotate here with Justin Houston, with Jabal Sheard. He's going to learn a really good combination of skill sets from those 2 players. And I do think down the road he could emerge as a really nice player. And you could do a hell of a lot worse than him as your 3rd pass rusher. So he had a good rookie year. Might even take a step down this year with getting Justin Houston in here in terms of his production, but I still like the outlook in terms of the future here. Then you have Tyquan Lewis, again a 2nd-round pick last year. He's going to play some interior as a 3rd down rusher on the inside. He'll play early on 1st down as like the Michael Bennett role as defensive end, a bigger bodied dude. He is kind of a high floor, low ceiling kind of player. Then they draft Ben Bonnigu in the 2nd round here, and he's a really good athlete, and kind of repeat what we said about Kemoko Turay in that he is not going to have to be much of an impact as a rookie, but he is going to bring a lot of high-end ceiling in terms of the development here. So as a 4th guy, you like what you have in the Turay-Bonnigu development cycle here with the veterans in Houston and Sheard above him, because those guys can play now. You can develop the other guys and hopefully have this edge rush figured out for the rest of the Andrew Luck era. They also drafted Jerry Green in the 6th round. They have Al-Qadim Muhammad, who showed some nice things last year. And then the interior rush, it's all right. They got Danico Autry, who really took a nice step up last year, coming over from Oakland as a waiver pickup, basically. He's a good interior rusher. Margus Hunt is a handful, just an absolute freak on the inside. Jihad Ward, a really good interior pass rusher as well. So these guys are going to be coming at you from every angle. They have a ton of guys that can rotate in here. Depending what Justin Houston is, they might not have that true number 1 guy, but they've got just a ton of pieces here. So it does come in as the 21st pass rush in the NFL for that reason. But it's definitely not going to be a weakness by any means. And then you have the linebackers here. They're going to come in 10th. You love what you have in Darius Leonard. Absolute breakout as a second-round pick. Just a fantastic draft pick here by Chris Ballard. I was pretty low on Darius Leonard. I just didn't see it. I probably didn't give him the due diligence that was necessary for a smaller school guy, but just a great find. One of the best linebackers in the NFL, period, and he's only in his second year. You do have some questions behind him. I know Colts fans really like Anthony Walker, and he's a player. You know, I think he's certainly starting caliber, but I don't know if he's necessarily a strength at this point. Maybe he can get there. And then you just have a bunch of like young guys. So they draft Bobby Okereke in the third round. He's a freak athlete. I didn't see him in the third round, but I was wrong about Darius Leonard last year. So who am I to question Chris Ballard when evaluating these linebackers? You know, maybe he can be a Darius Leonard type of rookie. Who knows? They have EJ Speed, a 5th-round pick, some 7th-round picks from last year, Matthew Adams, Zaire Franklin. I actually like Sky Moore coming out quite a bit. They have him on this roster, an undrafted free agent from last year. So they have a bunch of young depth, but no one that you're really pointing to and saying that's the guy next to Darius Leonard. But maybe one of those guys can take that step up. 10th is certainly not a bad ranking at linebacker for this team, and it is going to be somewhat of a strength there as long as they have Darius Leonard. And then the secondary here, you do have some questions. The cornerback room is pretty meh for me. You've got Pierre Desir, really good year last year, don't get me wrong, but he's to me a number 2 corner who is stuck as this team's number 1 currently. Quincy Wilson, a 2nd-round pick in 2017, did figure some things out here. This new scheme was very much fitting for him. He lacks some of that speed and quickness, but does have the size to be a press zone corner in this scheme that does kind of replicate the Seattle frame of mind. They're looking for those corners that can be a little more physical, run vertically, but not necessarily have to enter the middle of the field and run a lot of man coverage. Behind those two, they draft Rock Ya-Sin in the 2nd round. Now, he is going to compete with Quincy Wilson. He adds very much needed depth here on the outside. He's a really smart physical player and is a perfect fit in this scheme. Now, I had a 3rd-round grade on Rock Ya-Sin because of the lack of athleticism, but I had also acknowledged that if he could go to like Seattle, San Francisco, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, one of these teams that's a great scheme fit, he can really be a player. You know, a decent comparison for him is going to be like Josh Norman, to be honest. Like, he has that kind of upside as a playmaker, a really smart physical player, a trash talker. He's a player that I'm really excited to watch because he could be a really fun corner in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to start, though. He's going to have to beat out Quincy Wilson, I think. Then they have Nate Hairston, a 5th-round pick, whatever. Marvell Tell, a 5th-round pick that they are converting from safety. He fits that big-bodied mold. They're trying to kind of replicate what Seattle did there with Trey Flowers, a converted college safety. They did pick up Jalen Collins, a troubled but talented young corner. Maybe he can, re-cement himself as a starting caliber corner in the NFL. So they've done a good job of bringing in a lot more depth that they did not have last season. And then, of course, you have Kenny Moore in the nickel. He's one of the better nickel corners in the NFL. I don't really know who's going to play if anything happened to Kenny Moore, so he's got to stay healthy. But you'll love what you have there in the nickel. And then at safety, Malik Hooker made this team's most underrated player in my most underrated player on each team video. Love what he brings to the table. I don't know if there's 6 or 7 other safeties in the league that offer the rangy center field ability of Malik Hooker that opens up a ton of scheme flexibility for this team. You talk about this being the Seattle scheme here. You need that rangy free safety to run that cover 3 scheme because that center fielding safety is a massive pivot point for the cover 3 scheme. So I love Malik Hooker. I hope at some point he can have that statistical breakout where he gets the recognition he deserves. Safety and interceptions, it is a very fluky thing. Some safeties do have better instincts than others, sure, but it for the most part, interceptions at the safety position, it's luck, and the luck just hasn't gone his way yet. But I do think one of these years, Malik Hooker's going to have that 6-7 interception season where people finally are willing to say that he's one of the 5 best safeties in the NFL. Unfortunately, that is the way people think, that, especially at like safety, that they just look at the interception numbers because most casual NFL fans don't know how else to evaluate safety play. interception numbers are very low on the totem pole for me for evaluating safety. And then they have the combination of Clayton Geathers, Matthias Farley, and Khari Willis, a 4th-round pick here to be the Cam Chancellor role here as that bigger safety, almost a linebacker here, to play down in the box, help in run defense, and in these short to intermediate passing games. So Clayton Geathers, the starter right now, he can certainly play at a starting caliber level in that role. You have Matthias Farley, who's not far behind him as a player, and then Khari Willis, a very similar player in the 4th round here. They are going to be more than set. George Odom as well. They do need to keep Malik Hooker healthy, as the rest of these safeties don't have the range that Hooker has, but you love the depth at box safety. So the secondary as a whole comes in tied for 19th. I don't necessarily consider corner a strength of this team, depending what we see from Rocky Sin, I guess, but I do love what Malik Hooker brings to the table as a game-changing player. So the defense as a whole comes in 16th here. This has really been a good culture developed here under Matt Eberflus, who proved to be a good defensive coordinator last season. So even though they might lack some talent here, they don't have any elite players really on any level, like no superstars. Sure, Leonard or Malik Hooker could become that this season, but this team really does play cohesively. They know what they need schematically, and they do a good job here. This is going to be more than a good enough defense to support Andrew Luck, who's one of those quarterbacks that doesn't need a top 10 defense to win a Super Bowl. He just needs a defense that can get in teams' way, hold other teams to 25 points or so, and just let the offense do the rest of the work. So let's move on, wrap up here talking about the schedule for this team. It's not the easiest schedule in the world. You have 2 difficult road games to start the year. Now, the Chargers don't have a true home field advantage. This is a better team than the Titans, so maybe they can sneak away with wins there in the first 2 weeks of the season. I wouldn't completely rule that out. Then they do get 4 of 5 at home. In the middle there, they have to go to Kansas City. So I have them bouncing back here just like they did last year. They had a bit of a slow start. This is a team that can handle that type of adversity for 2 tough road games to start the year. Then down the stretch, it does get a lot easier. They have Miami at home, Jacksonville at home, Tennessee at home, at Tampa Bay, Carolina at home. And then I actually have an updated prediction here. If Jacksonville's out of the race, I don't see Indianapolis losing a game against Nick Foles in a game that would potentially get them into the playoffs. So I have this team going 10-6. Their over-under is 9.5. I would just stay away from that. It's one of those things, again, where their over is minus 165. If they're going to go over 9.5 wins, the odds of them winning this division are pretty good, and you can get them to win this division at plus 120, which pays almost double what that over pays. So if I'm offering gambling advice, that's why I say no bet, because just take them to win the division if you think they're going to go over 9.5 wins. Their playoff odds are minus 230, so Vegas feels pretty damn confident that this team is going to the playoffs. That's actually even a little higher than I have them. I do think there is a chance that this defense does actually regress if they suffer some injuries, or particularly on that offensive line with guys like Costanzo, Ryan Kelly. If 1 or 2 of those guys goes down, this offense might not be as functional. I'm not saying that will happen, and I'm certainly not predicting that it will, obviously, but I do think there is a floor there that, saying that they're a lock to make the playoffs like Vegas is, I don't necessarily think that, but I do think there's an upside here with this Colts team as well. Plus 1,600 to win the Super Bowl right now, that sounds about right. If you get this offensive line to stay healthy, and you get a guy like Paris Campbell to be as good as I project, this should be a team that can match much more so the talent of teams like New England and Kansas City to really compete in the playoffs with those teams, something that they probably were not in position to do last year, and I don't think that's saying that they need too much to go their way. This defense should also be a little better this year as well. So that's going to do it. Colts fans, what do you think? Do you have them any higher than 5? Are you expecting a Super Bowl this year? The rest of you NFL fans, what do you think about this Colts team? Make sure you hit that like button. Cheers as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace out.